No? Is everybody here? Are you ready? Now call June 13th, 2023 Urban Renewal Agency meeting to order at 6 p.m. Tammy, would you do the roll call, please?
Yes, we have Director Fox is absent. Director Bell. Present. Director Engelbretson.
Here, present.
Director Blaine. Director Lehman. Director Wells.
Here.
And Director Smith.
Here.
You do have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there anyone signed up to provide citizen testimony? No? Okay, we'll move right on to the business items. The first thing is the review and approval of the minutes for February 14th, 2023 of the Urban Renewal Agency. Are there any changes or edits for those minutes? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
I have a motion by Director Engelbretson
Second.
and a second by Director Blaine. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? No abstinences. So the minutes for the February 14th Urban Renewal Agency meeting are approved. And Ms. Heath will give us a financial update for the Urban Renewal Agency. Are you ready for that, Ms. Heath?
I am.
Okay.
Is it okay if I do from here? From here?
I
or would
think
you
so.
prefer
Yeah,
that?
your mic is on. It
Otherwise,
should
I'm gonna
be
be
fine.
up
Up
all
and
night
down.
long.
Sure.
So the Urban Renewal Agency's primary reason for existence is to provide support to the sewer debt fund, that for financial support. And so there's very little financial transactions in the URA on any given year. I think last year we had 5 total. So this year this is the balances as of March 31st, 2023. Cash on hand was 467,912. The primary revenues, there's only 2 streams of revenues, which is tax dollars, property tax dollars, and interest. The URA has 2 bank accounts, one at Key Bank and one at the state pool. There is a one-time transfer to the city every year. This year it was budgeted for $375,000. We did make that in April. It's not reflected here. Tax revenues received to date, 425,689, which did exceed the budgeted amount. So that was good. And there have, as of March 31st, there were 0 transactions. So I can answer any questions you might have regarding the urban renewal finances.
What again is the source of the income that comes into this budget?
It's property taxes and interest are the only sources of. Questions?
Along those lines, is more out of curiosity, is it specific tax properties that go to this versus the rest of the?
There is an urban renewal district. It's similar to the city, but a little bit different. There are some properties left out, some at the end of Coburg Industrial Way. And so it does have its own map. And so, yes,
But most of the properties in Coburg are included in the
Yes.
URA. And I believe the fire station is included in the URA. Am I correct on that?
no, I think yes,
I
but
think so.
yeah, yes, I think
I
it
think
is. And
Chief
then
Mintner mentioned
most
something
of
about
industrial, there's just some of the industrial area that was left out.
Why is that? Dan?
There was reasoning at the time that people brought up that they did not want them included.
They're
Um,
using the sewers, public sewers.
Yes. And honestly, I would have to go back and read minutes as to why those particular properties were left out, but there were some industrial properties left.
URA was established what year? Could you remind me?
It was 2001. Yeah, so it's been around a while.
Hard to set,
Yeah,
to guess what the thought process was.
Yeah.
When he
did include a little history in the staff report here as to why it was formed. Yeah, it looks like we did have a little bit of loss in property tax revenues year before, and it looks like they've recovered. So either they were, we don't always know if they're in arrears and being made up, or if a property has made a change. That decreases its value or whatever. So without going up and looking at each individual property, we don't always know what changes take place, but we did see an increase in property taxes this year.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on and now have a public hearing. So I will open the public hearing at 7. On resolution 2023-01-U, a resolution adopting the agency budget for fiscal year 2023-24 and creating expenditure appropriations. Ms. Heath, you have another staff report for us.
Okay, so this is actually the adoption of the budget for the URA. So revenues, total revenues budgeted are $419,000, consisting of tax revenues and interest income. Administrative expenses, which includes the cost of the audit, additional services, advertising, meetings, and then they pay some administrative costs to the city for keeping the books for the URA. That equals $10,425. And then there is a one-time transfer to sewer debt fund for $375,000. It leaves an unappropriated ending fund balance of $108,575, which is a very good balance. It's higher than it's been. If taxes come out next year as well as they did this year, that can probably be increased for the next tax year or budget year. So sewer debt would receive more money. And a copy of the budget is attached. It's a very simple budget. And that's really all there is to it is administrative costs, receiving revenue, administrative costs, and then pushing a payment out to sewer debt.
Is there anyone registered to, are there any questions, first of all?
Is it necessary that this be audited? Is that a state mandate or you?
URA So we've kind of changed it. It receives a very small audit. It's only like, I think it's $5,000. It's a much smaller audit, but yes, it has to be audited.
I'm just reading this wrong. I'm reading 8,700.
No,
I don't got that wrong.
that was last year, but we changed to a different, kind of a different process of review, for it. And so it's a less expensive audit.
So it had been the
been a little
8,700
bit
and
more.
this year it will be 5,000. It's a projection.
We have to do it.
Yes.
With all sorts of mandates, don't we? Difficult for us. Any other questions? Is there anyone registered or signed up to provide testimony?
No.
If not, I will close the hearing, the public meeting at 6:10. Discussion. I will entertain a motion.
I move to adopt resolution 2023-01-U. A resolution adopting the agency budget for fiscal year 2023-24 and creating expenditures and appropriations.
I have a motion by Director Blaine. Do I have a second? Second by Director Wells. To adopt resolution 2023-01-U, adopting the agency budget for fiscal year 2023-24 and creating expenditure appropriations. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? None. The motion to approve the budget carries. Are there 6 of us to 0? With that, we can adjourn the URA meeting at 6:12. Anybody need a break before we start on council? Such a quick meeting, such good work. Thank you all. All right, so our next order of business then will be to the next order of business is for me to shuffle papers. I apologize for that. I will call the city council meeting to order. This is on June 13th of 2023, and I will call it to order at 6:13. Council Engelbretson, would you lead the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Yeah, I'll just let you take that drink of water.
Yeah, right. Wait till somebody.
I could be a dentist.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States. To the republic for which it stands. One nation, under God, indivisible. Sammy, could you please do roll call?
Yes, all of our counselors are present with the exception of Counselor Fox, and we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Mayor's comments, first of all. And in the red folder, you will find a municipal fundamentals training that is being put on by the League of Oregon Cities. There is one that is in Salem on September 21st. The cost is just $30. And I've been to one of these and it didn't have all of this in it, but it was wonderful. It was well worth the time and money. to go. So if any of you are interested, let Sammy know. The training will take place 8:30 to 1 and lunch will be provided. So such a deal. So, yeah, and the one in Salem is certainly closest, but there is also one in Vale, Echo. Where is Echo? Way Eastern, that's what I thought. Coquille, Forest Grove, or Redmond. And they stretch from August up until early November. So if there's one that is better for you to go to, again, I would highly encourage you to attend if you can. I was going to go and then I realized that I am going to be out of town on that in September. So I will not be able to go to this. I'm sure there will be other opportunities. Really, it would be great if you I don't have a lot of comments, but I did want to, I don't know, well, I know that Counselor Smith was at the concert on Saturday, and I know that Council Engelbretson was there because she was in the choir performing. And for those of you that weren't able to make it, it was fantastic. I just really enjoyed it. There was a piano soloist, Linda Zhang. She is a concert pianist. She was good, but the choir was just really great. So I would encourage you, and I think there will be more performances coming up that holiday season. So do that if you can. If you haven't had a chance to see the quilt blocks on the fence facing Pavilion or yes, Pavilion Park, they're just beautiful. And I understand that Mural or Arts Committee is accepting donations because they have the okay to of those, but they have to buy plywood, and we all know how expensive wood is. So they're looking for some donations to help defray those costs. If you have any spare change in your pocket, just, jingle that off. It's summer. It is summer. In case you hadn't noticed, it's hot. It's June, middle of June. And often we take a summer break in August. So that is something that I'll want you to think about. And you don't have to decide right this minute, but probably by either later in this meeting or by our next meeting in July, we'll need to decide if we're going to break. There is a lot. There's always a lot of work to be done. And I don't think we took a break last year. I'm not sure about that year before, but think about it, see what's happening. This is a busy time of year. So Wells was saying that summer is less busy for him, but I know for my household, it tends to get busy. Kids are doing things, graduations are occurring, sports is in full swing. If you have kids or grandkids in sports, they never seem to quit. So I do appreciate each and every one of you being here. And personally appreciate it. So that's really all that I have to comment on at this point. So we'll just move on. There is a red folder item also, other than the educational opportunity, and that is the public art donation temporary crosswalk art. And Sammy, where should that go in the packet? Is there a particular
Yeah, it's
place
going
or-
to be added at agenda item 12.5. There's a sticker on top of it, page 165.
Okay. All right, let's tuck that in there.
We also have, just so we can call it out, a correction on the agenda, item number 6. The fiscal year stated 22-23, and it should be 23-24.
Yes. We ought to get the years right. All right, so now we can go on to have any citizens testimony tonight? Is anyone signed up?
There's not.
There's not. We'll go on to the consent agenda. We have the minutes from May 9th to take a look at and approve. We have the budget committee appointment for LCOG, for IT and IS.
On the consent agenda, the LCOG are not on the consent.
That's not consent. I apologize. Move that out of the consent agenda. The only consent agenda items then would be the minutes for May 9th.
The appointment of Jeff Balam and Terry Dawson to the budget committee.
Right. The budget committee. Any member of the council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? No? Then I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. Okay. So it's going to be Jeff Milam being reappointed to the budget committee and Terry Dawson served on the budget committee for some time. So I again will entertain a motion. Their terms would be, let's see, they would expire, they're 3-year terms, right? So if they're reappointed, they would come out of 20 years. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda as amended. Excuse me.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Councilor Wells.
I'm sorry, it's not amended, it's as presented.
As presented.
It's not amended.
Well, I amended it because my notes to myself.
Oh, gotcha.
So as presented,
As presented.
Second.
and a second by Councilor Blaine. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? So it passes 5 to with no opposition. Do we have any special guests tonight? No special guests. And we do have a public hearing. Resolution 2023-08, a resolution declaring the city's election to receive state revenues based on ORS 221-770. I will now open the public hearing. Looks like 6:20. Sorry, pushed it too hard. Went off the clock. Okay. So we have a staff report from Ms. Heath, the city administrator.
Thank you. So there's two resolutions tonight. The city holds a public hearing to discuss the use of state shared revenues and declaring the city's election to receive state revenues. And then the second resolution that we will have tonight is the city certifying that we are eligible to receive them. So these are annual resolutions that must be passed. So the city receives state shared revenues in 4 areas. We receive cigarette sales, liquor sales, highway trust revenues, and state shared revenues. Highway trust funds go to the street department. And they can be used for construction, reconstruction, preservation, maintenance, repairs of the streets and roads. All the rest go to the general fund or operations. I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have. I did send a booklet out to the council. So if you had a chance to look at it, it's very interesting.
Was interesting because they're all, and you said that last meeting, that they were all at different levels and different percentages, and that was interesting. It's also interesting that we're smoking less and drinking more.
Quite a bit.
Quite a bit more.
Quite a bit more, yeah.
I think that the decrease in smoking may be, if you look back historically, the cost of cigarettes have risen exponentially.
And cigarettes only, not tobacco. Right? The cigarettes or is it tobacco?
You know,
It
that's,
says cigarettes. but-
it's probably both, yeah. Chew and
Yeah.
smoke,
Yeah,
smokeless and smoke.
there you go.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay. Is there anyone registered or signed up to provide testimony? I can. 6:26. So discussion. Not, I will, can we take, no, but you only presented on the one. I was gonna say, could we take both of them together?
It's 2 separate.
We'll do them separate.
One is electing to receive them, one is certifying that we are eligible, so that's really 2 different.
Okay. So I will accept a motion to approve resolution 2023-08, a resolution declaring the city's election to receive state revenues.
I move to adopt resolution 2023 city's election to receive state revenues.
A motion by Councilor Lehman. I have a second.
I'll second.
Second by Councilor Smith. All of those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Our next item of business is to declare that we are in fact eligible to receive the state shared revenues based on ORS 221-760. And again, we have a staff report by Ms. Heath.
So in order to be eligible to receive state shared revenues, you have to provide at least, let's see, services including.
Excuse me, Ms. Heath, I probably need to be. No,
You're
I'm
doing
doing,
good.
I'm
You're doing
okay.
fine.
All right, never mind. Move on.
So we need certify that we provide at least 4 of the following services: police protection, fire protection, street construction, sanitary sewers, storm sewers, planning, zoning, and subdivision, and 1 or more utility services. So Coburg is eligible to receive state revenues, and this resolution is the council certifying that we do in fact provide these services to our community.
Are there any questions? And I will entertain a motion.
I move to adopt resolution 2023-09, a resolution declaring the city's certification of eligibility for state shared revenues.
I have a motion by Counselor Engelbretson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Blaine. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? It passes 6-0. Now we're into a public hearing, correct?
Mayor, motion passes 5-0.
5-0. I apologize. Yes, Counselor Fox is gone.
We have one more resolution.
No, we don't have a public hearing.
No. Okay,
It's a lot.
so we
Action
have
items.
the
Item number 5, for the resolution
adopting the salary. Yes.
Well, no, it's the reason I'm doing usually these are done by the budget officer, all of these annual resolutions. So that's why you get me over and over again. So this resolution is to adopt the official salary and classification schedule that the city uses. All employees must be paid off of the schedule, and our budgets are set on the schedule. And we met with the council in May, and you did look at the approve the pay schedule to go forward with a 4% COLA increase. And so that is and there is a copy of the pay schedule if you have a magnifying glass.
That's pretty small.
In this, but I'm happy to always send it out if anybody wants a larger piece. So our pay schedule is 14 steps. That was established clear back in 2012 with 2% increases on each step. So we a 4% increase is added to step 1 for the COLA. And then the rest of them are a 2% after that. Employees for the city are all over this scale. It depends on how long they've been here, where they're at their jobs. And so we anticipate where they will be on this at budget time, and that's how we budget. And so this has to be adopted along with the budget. And this is something that we are audited on. So once a year, the auditor will come in and they look at files to make sure that every employee is on the scale and being paid properly. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on it. Sir.
So step 14 would mean the person's been here 14 years.
No, it doesn't at all. It means that they're at the top of their scale. So employees can, sometimes they can be given a 2-step increase. It just depends. And usually annually they're giving a 2% increase. But this year we're only giving a 4% COLA and no step increases. Historically, we've usually given a 2 to 3% COLA and then a 2% step increase. But since the COLA is 4% this year, that's what employees are getting.
So what determines, you said they sometimes get a 2-step?
Sometimes a supervisor will come and say, hey, this person's doing really well. They've achieved this, this, and this, and I feel that they should get more than just 1 step. So we'll work that into the budget. Sometimes they're going to be promoted. So we take that into account that we will have promotions at July 1st of some employees. So they'll move up on the scale. So when they reach 14, they're at the end of their scale. So they either need to move up In public works and police, they have the opportunity for certifications, so that pays them a little bit more. But once they get to step 14, probably, and they're not being promoted, and there's no way to move up, the only increase they're gonna receive until the schedule is changed is a COLA.
Some districts do a half step after they do the max. Has that ever been discussed?
I'm sorry,
Some districts, maybe cities too, do half steps after they opt out. Has that ever been discussed?
we can't really do that because we have to stay on the scale, so we can't do half steps. At the point when so a couple of years ago, the city saw a lot of employees kind of reaching the top. So the city did go out and do a salary analysis and reset the scale. And so most employees ended up somewhere in the middle of the scale. There's very few that are at the top of their scale. Our city recorder was at the top of her scale this year. But we also changed her scale to align with the finance director. So she has room to grow. So we try to watch those scales, and we're always trying to look at how we can make sure employees have a way to grow. We hope sometimes it's just not possible, but the majority of time we're trying to make it happen.
I remember a couple of years ago when we did that salary analysis and we bumped a lot. There were some large increases.
Yes.
As we all know, our staff, our employees are really our great. To look at what the competition is. But it is not, in my experience, most organizations or the organizations that I've worked in have had a top where you sort of redlined unless you're, as Ann said, being promoted or something.
Do you ever consider a one-time longevity pay bonus? We haven't done that in the past. No. Bonuses as a whole are pretty rare in city government. And maybe it wasn't a bonus, it was longevity pay once we maxed out on our steps and we got like a one-time 2,000 or a percentage longevity pay for that. I think that would need to be considered if we were looking at a scale where our employees are hitting the top and the city really doesn't have the ability to move the scale on a full scale basis. Then you would have to look at how do we address that on an individual basis. But that has to be aligned with employee policies. And right now, employee policies say that employees are paid on the scale and they have cert pay as one of the other options for earning money. So we allow up to 3 Public Works has 6 certifications at 1.5%, and police have 3 certifications at 3%, and they're limited to that. And not all of them have all of them. They earn them. That's part of even getting promotions you've got certain certifications you're getting to go to the next level. Such as in Public Works, it would be water and sewer certifications. That's going to bump them up. Possibly once they get 1 or more of those, they're going to another step in the Public Works scale.
They sort of build upon those sort of start at the top and well, you know, sometimes it would be easier. And do employees, they say new hires coming in with a lot of experience, do they start at step 1?
No, not necessarily. No, usually there's a negotiation. There's a scale that we're looking at, and it depends on their experience. If they're coming in fully seasoned, they might be half or 3/4 away up the scale when they're hired. If they're just coming in and newly to that position, they're going to start at at number 1.
That may answer your question too about the step 14 when somebody has been here for. Okay, any other questions? Comments? If not, I will entertain a motion to accept the resolution adopting the salary and classification schedule for fiscal year 2023-24.
I move to adopt resolution 2023-10, the fiscal year 2023-24, City of Coburg pay scale.
By Counselor Blaine. Do I have a second? Second by Counselor Lehman. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5, 5, 4. And anyone opposed? No. So the motion passes 5-0. Now we get another public, right?
Yeah, last one.
All right. Oh, good. I just love this gavel. Okay. We'll open the public hearing at 6:41. This is on resolution 2023-11, a resolution adopting the city's budget for fiscal year 2023-24, creating appropriations, setting the tax, and imposing the tax and categorizing the tax. We'll have a staff report from Ms. Eve.
So this is adopting the budget that which was approved and recommended by the budget committee. Total budget of the city is 17,969,888. The general fund budget would be 3,436,284. Street fund budget is 2,524,462. Excuse me. Water fund is 6,900,055. And sewer fund is 2,280,610. I'm happy to answer any questions. The total budget is attached, well as the summary. Yes, sir.
Counselor Lehman.
Just note that the budget committee recommended that we do additional funding for the general fund. So I just wanted to put that out there as to how and when we want to do that.
Options for increasing revenue. That at this meeting, but I think we probably, certainly by the time of retreat next year, I think we really need to be discussing that and perhaps coming to retreat in February with some. For those of you that attended the budget meetings, and I assume, because I can't quite remember, that the total, all of the forms are in our packet that show that by the 5th year, because remember we budget and project out for 5 years on the budget, by year 5, we're not looking as good as we are right now. This year, next year, the year after that, I believe we're okay. But if our revenues stay flat, we're going to have a problem. If our spending doesn't decrease or our revenues don't go up, we're going to have a problem.
Well, I think that's even.
Yeah, but there's also
not very much.
expenses increase as well.
No, but the revenues increased. It's
Yeah.
not just that they stay flat.
Well, they increase some. They aren't increasing enough to keep up with the expenditures.
Right.
You're right on that.
And out in 2027 in the general, so the general fund really absorbs a lot of the business of the city and absorbs the cost of the business of the city. The sewer, water and street funds reimburse the city for their share of the work that happens on administrative level. But there's still, the general fund still supports every other department of the city, parks, police, court, administration, planning. And so it's a lot, it's a heavy lift for the general fund. And at this time in the economic challenges that we're facing, it will become a problem for the general fund. And so, yes, that was a recommendation that they made.
There's a question that was raised, on how do we increase revenues, and then a discussion ensued after that. Certainly we can look at fees, but is that the only, do we need to look at some fee on parks fee or public safety fee? Is there some other way that revenue can be in? And I know we've bounced around over the last several years, the potential for a park district, which would have its own appropriations with it. At that point, I don't know. That's certainly something we need to think about. Be ready for this.
Yeah, I just wanted, I don't know if it's easy to show on here, but could you remind us, and if it's possible, I don't know, like in the general fund here, as we're looking at it and we're looking out to year 2027 or 2028, is there a spot where it shows us approximately what the estimated shortfall would be in those years?
Yeah, absolutely. So on page 27, at the bottom of the graph there, you see some bright yellow highlighting with some
You're
red.
almost done. Click Open File in the top right to continue.
I think she was doing online shopping. I mean, that's usually me and my watch talking to us.
So yes, in that, where you see red is projected now. So keep in mind that we are not projecting out too much growth on the east side because we just don't know what to project. It's very difficult, and I've talked to a couple other city managers and they just basically recommended you don't project it because we have no idea what's going to go over there. Nothing. And so if there were growth in that created valuable tax assets, then it could raise more tax dollars. You do have some growth in residential happening. Coburg does hold its value, so you have that going for you. That better than almost any other area in Lane County, Coburg holds its value. And so it's something to watch, but not wait. And thinking about how you provide the services that are funded through the general fund. And so.
What are those projections in the next 3-4 years in terms of our salaries? Those are already projected to
They're
be,
already projected out and they're projected at 4%. Yeah.
that's 4%.
Most all materials and services are projected out at 4% growth.
Would that be 4% plus the 2% step increase?
No, it's just 4%. That's how we notoriously done it. Normally, we don't do a 4% COLA.
Right.
So it would be a 2% COLA and a 2% step increase. So,
Decided on the 4% COLA this year because of the inflation. And I believe that our staff elected to go with the 4% COLA rather than a 2% COLA and a 2% step. Yeah. Yeah, based on cost of goods and services.
Honestly, up until the point where you can either the revenues and materials and services balance out, there's a growth. And so general fund is receiving more funds. You can't really afford to pay more than that. And so without cutting other things in the budget. So it's a wait and see how things go over the next few years. So, but I certainly wouldn't wait to discuss options for raising revenues.
And maybe the east side will, everything will get approved and it'll take off and we'll have a lot more tax revenue coming in and cost of goods and services will go down a lot. Really counting on that, but I guess it is a possibility, but it is certainly something that we are watching. And it's a reason that we do that 5-year projection out so that we can really see what's happening, so that we can plan for that in advance. Any other questions? Is there anyone signed up to provide public testimony?
There's not.
You're just here to just observe us? I see. Well, welcome. We're really happy you're here. Okay, well, I will, and there's no one signed up, you said. So I will close the public hearing at 6:51. And I will entertain a motion to accept the city's budget for fiscal year 2023-24 at your convenience.
I move to adopt resolution 2023-11. Resolution adopting the budget for fiscal year 2023-2024. Creating appropriations, setting the tax, imposing the tax, and categorizing.
By Councilor Wells, do I have a second? Second by Councilor Blaine. In favor, signify by raising your hand. I have 4 and 0 against. Motion passes. Thank you.
So much work and just that short.
No.
It represents months and months of work on the stuff. And so
that is a lot of work, and it was great discussions with the budget committee. There was a lot of dialogue, very thoughtful. That was terrific. Okay, so now we have Resolution 2023-12. Employment agreement for Adam Hanks for the position of city administrator. Okay, so you on again?
I'm on again. It's the end show tonight.
Wanted to sit down.
Wanted to make, you guys don't mind if I just wanted to make sure I got all the staff reports in I could. In August of 23, I let you know I was vacating my position as city administrator. And I will be leaving on, in the fall. August 31st, I will vacate the position. We did hold a hiring process. And Adam Hanks was chosen for the city administrator position. We did offer the position through an intent to hire, and the offer was accepted. The mayor, the mayor and I and attorneys worked together to design an agreement with Adam, and then we shot it to him and he made a few tweaks. And so the agreement presented to you tonight is the final agreement unless the council has changes. And it's a pretty standard agreement for a city administrator. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you might have regarding.
I see the salary amount, but what step is he entering at?
So the city administrator
that's right.
doesn't enter into a step. It's a contracted position.
Any questions? Haven't had the opportunity to meet Adam. Two candidates that came and interviewed. That was in, did we do that, May, April? Seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't really. And he has the experience and just outshone our other candidate. He's had long experience with that. Other questions? If none, I will entertain a motion to accept the contract. Present this to Mr. Haynes.
Resolution 2023-12, approving the employment agreement with Adam Hanks for the position of city administrator.
Have a motion by Counselor Lehman. Have a second.
I'll second that.
Second by Counselor Engelbretson. Council discussion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 5 in favor. Any opposed? No, that's good, because that would mean that somebody else had to be here. So there are no opposition and the motion. Now we have, and I will point out that by hiring Adam Hanks, we are keeping a city administrator with the same initial.
Oh, wow.
AH. So if any of you file things under initials. You may have to do AH1 and AH2. And Adam hopefully will be able, he would have come tonight, but he is finishing up a city administrator position, a temporary position in Gold Hill, and they were doing budget presentation. Not elect to come tonight, but he has been following along, watching the tapes and reviewing all of our things that we discuss, and is excited. We're gonna be very fortunate, though we will miss Anne greatly. Okay, so now we have, I'm sorry, I have to keep flipping back and forth here. We have the second reading of ordinance A 171-C, and ordinance amending ordinance A 171 as amended by A 171-A and A 171-B, and ordinance establishing city park regulations. Oh yes, ordinance A 246-A, and ordinance amending ordinance A 246, and ordinance controlling vehicular and pedestrian traffic. This is the second reading, and is there yet again another staff report by Ms. Heath?
a thing to do
Get them
lately.
all in.
So, this is the second reading. Just a back history, in case people are listening, the city had a legal attorney review our ordinances and give us recommendations on changes we needed to make. She reviewed about 5 ordinances and she made recommendations to change 2. The changes are minimal and they can be viewed. I had my finger and then I put it down. So the changes to the amending the park ordinance. Sorry. Not working. It's, just call out a page for you, but. Oh. 59. Yes, so 59. So what this does, so in reference to the parks and parks closure hours or individuals being able to camp in the park, we're setting forth a section that by administrative order for the temporary use of public lands by individuals experiencing homelessness, a city administrator or a designee can modify under administrative order based on the factors that the city administrator deems relevant. So if there is a time when there is an issue, just remember that a person camping, we can't ask them to move up a public property unless we have some place for them to move to. And we cannot ask them to move out of the city limits. And so this allows, we're not designating any one space for this to take place. What we're saying is the city administrator has the ability to create an administrative order designated even temporarily a place where someone can camp. So that is the change in the park ordinance. So that is the only recommended change.
For those of you, I think Counselor Smith, you asked about what is considered public land or what public lands are within Coburg.
Yeah, what public lands?
And so if you look after page
And I
would be
did see the map.
89, I believe,
Yeah.
it's after page 88, you'll see a map with the green that designates our public lands in Coburg. We don't have a lot. So it's, and we're not the only city that is grappling with this. I had a mayor's roundtable last week, and every city within the state of Oregon is grappling with this. We were lucky that there really weren't a lot of recommended changes by our legal group in our current ordinance, because some cities are having to totally rewrite ordinance to be able to make this work. And if we don't, then as of July 1, we're out of compliance with the state laws and are subject or potentially subject. This is a starting point. It's not an ending point. I just want to bring that. Councilor Lehman.
So just some clarification. So between 10 PM and 7 AM, a person can use our parks.
So not on any given day. If we have, so it has to be under administrative order. So Coburg doesn't have a lot of homeless. We have some, most of them are passing through. They find a place on the roadside, pitch a tent or lay down on a piece of cardboard in a sleeping bag. And basically what we are saying is by administrative order, the city administrator can say, you can't camp here, but you can camp over here. And that is to, number one, keep it safe for the homeless person, because camping in some areas is probably going to be unsafe for them. And also for residents as well. Yes, sir.
So I wasn't really speaking about homelessness or camping, but person can use our parks between 10 o'clock and 7 a.m. They're not closed, is that correct?
No, the parks are closed at dusk.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at the top of page 59, it kind of makes it sound like as long as you're not disturbing the peace, you can be 10 and 7, but no, parks are closed between 10 and 7. Okay. Under section 15.3, are we going to be actually issuing a permit for someone to use the tent? Or will that be, do they apply for it? Do we?
So in that case, this is old, this is kind of old language that's being left in. So that could be all kinds of things. Sometimes when we have might have events where vendors are camping. So they're buying a permit to be a vendor. They're allowed to camp in their truck or whatever at the park overnight. And so that is not new language. It is taking into account that things happened during the year at the city and people might be here. And
Even though they're closed, we can give a permit.
we
to
can
let
give a
people-
permit. Say there's a bike race and the bikers are gonna end up in Coburg, spend the night in the park and go on. The city can issue a pit permit for that use
That specific event.
if we choose to.
And this, we don't really have anything that says it's closed. It's just, we have a sign that says parks are closed
The
from 10 to 7.
parks say they're closed.
Is that part of the ordinance or that?
That is
someplace?
part of the ordinance and that's unchanged. So the number 1 at the top of page 59, that is language that exists in the ordinance.
I'm just saying, it just kind of makes it sound as long as you're only if you're disturbing the peace, it is not permitted. Kind of implies that if you're not disturbing the peace.
But it does say under section 15.1, no person shall sleep in any park between. the
Right,
hours
that's
of
sleeping.
10
I'm just talking
and
about if somebody wanted to be in the park.
I think that we're not going looking for trouble. So
Okay,
if somebody's being peaceful, quiet in the park and looking at the stars, I doubt the chief's gonna bother them. But if they're blasting a radio or making noise or bouncing a basketball or whatever, he probably is.
Pickleball.
Yeah, playing pickleball. So
And as I understand it, though, the city administrator can say, well, in this particular case, because this person's obviously homeless, we're going to allow them to sleep in the park.
They have to go to a designated area.
But she could designate. or
I
whoever
could
could-
designate a park, what this says is the city administrator can take all facts into consideration on any given day. Maybe there's a festival going in the downtown park and that's not gonna work.
Mhm.
So then there has to be another designated space. So what we're saying is we're not gonna say what the designated space is. And we're not gonna promise that's always gonna be the designated space.
That's good language, yeah. But as it is right now, if somebody is obviously homeless and sleeping in the park, we don't normally kick them out. I mean, we had like last summer, we had somebody that was there every so often and that's kind of our policy, right? So, I mean, it's not policy, but that's kind of an
Right, so
unwritten policy.
if we ask them to move, we have to have a place for them to move to, or we cannot ask them.
And I think police and public works have been sort of enforcing this on an as needed basis for quite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of the city administrator. though.
But it allows the city to be nimble to address individual, just individual. It
Yeah.
might be very different, you know, so.
That's good language. I mean, it is, allows you to be nimble. I mean,
Yeah,
it does. It's still within the terms that the state's requiring us to be.
And it's a good way to also consider that there's safety on both sides, safety for the homeless. We have to consider where is a safe place that they're gonna feel safe, where they, and where is it inappropriate? So probably in the right of way in front of somebody's residence is not gonna be appropriate. But if that's where they're camping, then we need to be able to give them someplace they can go.
I had two questions. One of them was when we are looking at sites. I think that one of the sites we discussed, somebody said there might be room for more than one tent or one party, that maybe there'd be room for 3 or 4 or 5. Does that then become a camp because there's room for more than one occupant? No, okay. And the other thing, kind of piggybacking on what Councilor Wells said. As I looked at this, I like the ordinance, but given the fact that we're getting a new city administrator, and also the fact that in some of the readings I've done, city council makes the decision as to where homeless are going to sleep, which became cumbersome, caused a lot of chaos and divisiveness. Would it be wise to consider creating a stakeholder group outside of this ordinance so that it isn't simply a one-person staff decision? I can see that setting up a new person for a very negative entry to our community, because it's not an issue now, but if we look at worst case scenario and it becomes one, would it be wise to consider that we do a stakeholder group of the community? Business person,
We have discussed that.
community at large, so that our city, whichever, I'm afraid that the community is going to get upset when this starts to happen, if it does. And to have them feel like the staff is making all the decisions for everybody may cause a problem, but we don't want it to be such a awful process that every city council meeting is nothing but that.
No, I highly would recommend a committee, a citizen committee on homelessness.
Maybe that would include someone from parks, but also someone from the business area, as well as just a community person at large that would be willing to meet with the city administrator and share in the input so that the community gets some input and doesn't feel like they're being ramrodded by the government or the staff.
We can certainly set up a group. If we go into a committee, we would then need council approval to create that committee. But I think probably to begin with, just like we have the transportation group at this point, I think that we could probably within the next couple of months set up the group. And there are some interested community
Oh,
members
good.
that I've already.
I would open it up to the community and ask.
And I'm comfortable with it not being in the ordinance, but I'm not comfortable with the ordinance unless we do create something to
Makes total sense.
help with input.
Would the city administrator answer to that committee? I mean, they have to be nimble enough to be on almost a daily basis to be able to say, no, this person can't stay here, but you can stay over here. You're not gonna have time to assemble the committee.
And I don't see the city administrator answering to that committee. I think the ordinance clearly states that they have, the buck stops with them. They have final say. Obviously, they're gonna talk with other staff members that are involved, but I just think that so that the community understands that it isn't one person making this decision and that there is input and that group has input, that the city administrator makes a decision with input from the group, which the city administrator would consider anyway. And no, not that they have to, the committee has to approve it, but just so that there's input to the city administrator.
Dialogue.
So community has input and dialogue.
Councilor Blaine.
Just saying, I get the idea. I think it makes sense on its face, but I worry that it might get a little complicated bringing in a lot of community members that all have differing views on homelessness and drug use, and whatever that might be, that I could get really uncomfortable and put people against one another. I think I'd worry about that a little bit. I mean, I think our public works and our police have done a really good job of maintaining, kind of helping people if they're transient or trying to move through Coburg, that you can stay the night here, maybe tomorrow I can give you a ride to X, right? I think that's kind of the best mindset, in my opinion, as we start this process and see where the state ends up. Because we're in such a gray area that we're just really unsure to jump into committee right away. I think would make me a little bit nervous to just say, all right, here's what we're doing. We want 10 people's input. Then that starts bouncing around the community. And I think that's going to create a little animosity at some level. I think that might be a little bit too early in my.
And when I was thinking of it, my mindset wasn't that we form a committee with a lot of people, but just that the community knows that more than one person is involved in the input and the decision making. But I think that if we see an increase in homelessness, we are going to get a lot of divisiveness and misunderstanding regardless. And if we can say, this is what we did the best we could for input, then we're kind of covered with what gives you the right to make this decision for all of us is what the question I'm afraid will be.
I think the state made the decision for us, that
Right.
actually the courts made the decision.
But as far
for
as
us,
where
and-
we cite,
Right, and there
areas.
really, again, there are not very many places within the city of Coburg that are public lands. So we're very limited in terms of where they can be. I think that certainly the people that I have talked to, and probably the people that you have talked to, can agree that we don't want to disrupt our residential neighborhoods. We don't want to disrupt our parks with playgrounds, or that parks that are within residential neighborhoods. So that really pushes us to not very many places.
I think the beauty of a committee, or not a committee, or a discussion group, either or, is that there's places other than public lands that people could camp on. But that is a partnership within the community. That is, whether it's our churches or somebody owns a piece of property who says, you know what? It's okay, you can use my property when these times happen. I think those are the discussions that need to take place. And because we can say you can camp here on a private piece of property if the property owner agrees or a church agrees, but the community is going to have to come together to put that in place.
I think the terminology discussion group
Yeah.
is probably a good stakeholder group, discussion group, not an advisory group.
or committee.
Right, just that people are being able to give their input and perhaps offer up other solutions. And I think that would be great.
We could limit the number of people that are in it. And
Absolutely.
make sure that we have a good representation of everybody. It's going to
Do that. It'll take us a little while to get that together, but in the meantime, we'll be in compliance with the law.
The question?
Councilor Wells.
Do we have any, I hate to use the word recourse, if we see that the administrator, we're getting feedback from people in the community that the administrator allowing this to happen more often than what they're comfortable, do we have recourse? Can we, at each monthly council meeting, have a discussion with the city administrator and say, look, we're hearing this from the general public, not real happy with the decisions you've been making with regards to this particular ordinance? I mean, not likely to happen, but what if we get somebody who's doing things that are just upsetting people? How do we?
I would ask
supersede
that you,
this?
I would ask that you come to the mayor, bring those
Right.
concerns to the mayor, and then the mayor would meet with the city council or city administrator.
Okay.
Because we meet at least weekly.
So that's a helpful process to
Yeah.
know that will be.
Yep,
Some
so
control.
bring it to the mayor and the mayor will go beyond there. Thank you.
Dump it on
Good
you.
question.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I get paid the big bucks.
But yeah, but maybe one of these days we'll talk about that.
Yeah, well, we have to get that in the budget, right? Counselor Ingles.
I'm kind of on, I see both sides. I see what you're saying, Kyle, and or Counselor Blaine and also Counselor Smith. I'm not sure how this is going to go. I haven't heard a lot of people worried about this yet in Coburg. Do we wait a little bit and see if there is concern? Because what the staff has proposed is that if somebody tries to camp in one of our parks, they're most likely going to be directed to the end of Industrial Way where we have a nature area. I'm just gonna call it.
Mhm.
Are we going to get very many complaints? I don't know.
I think
Sure.
from what I've heard from some people isn't so much, it's a misunderstanding of what we have to do as a city government. I heard comments today that another city's just not gonna do it and we shouldn't either. And it's like, well, we don't have the option. So I think that there's a whole lot of chatter out there. And I just feel like, you know, what's gonna hit the fan sooner or later, and the more prepared we are and the more we've done to give input, the better off we're gonna. I would assume that a city who neglects to do this better have deep pockets. And that was brought up by another person in the group, but there is a lot of concern, there is a lot of chatter, and there's a lot of misinformation. So the more we can get out, the more the community can feel heard, so they get clarification, not just from the city administrator or the police department, but no, there's a citizens group also.
At the mayor's roundtable meeting, I mean, there was every community within Lane County was represented there. Not one of those communities said, and we're not doing anything. We're just gonna see.
And I think the rumor mill is kind of around
Yeah.
there. Is there any move by rural, smaller town mayors and councils to reach out to our representatives so that they know how we feel and invite them to town hall meetings? I know that the state's in a bit of a flux. I don't know that it's gonna codify this session, which gives us a little bit of.
No, this is our.
This
codified.
part, but
This
isn't
portion
Oregon
is very
planning
codified.
on enhancing it further?
And again, we don't know what's
Yeah.
coming. It could get more stringent.
And
It
that's,
could get less stringent. I mean, and that's why the recommendation from council was don't make a huge number of
Right.
changes. And this is what I was hearing across the board at the meetings. Don't go making a whole bunch of changes because this is in a state of flux.
and even if what I was wondering is if small towns who band together as a larger voice. It's not that we don't want this, but when you look at the percentage of open space we have in Coburg compared to the percentage of open space, it's a one size fits all law that they have in Portland or Salem or San Francisco or whatever. When you look at the percentage that we have, we could very easily end up saying, this is where you can go. But then they say, but if that's not adequate, you have to reopen. My concern is we could end up with more homeless people in our city, unhoused people, than the citizens in the community if we have to keep opening more sites because they come. So that was my concern, is that how do we get the legislature looking at small towns in a different way?
Each of us as community members can reach out to our legislators. And I would certainly encourage any of us to do that. If you have.
I would imagine that this will be on the law conference in the fall,
Mhm.
and if you haven't attended the law conference, do it because it's a great conference. But I'm pretty sure that this will be on the conference, at that conference, and that gives a chance for counselors to talk with one another from different communities. Lots of sessions are directed directly at counselors, mayors and counselors. But this is not going away. It's going to
No.
be the topic of every held. And so you can definitely go to those conferences and participate in those discussions. But you can always reach out to your legislators.
Amen.
I'm not really a great fan of signage, but how do we? Do sleep or the tent, are we gonna have signs out throughout the town directing them where they can go, or?
No, because this is gonna be so like I said before, it's nimble. It's we
Just see
recognize,
somebody and we respond to them.
recognize we have a homeless person. They're not camping in an area that is recommended. Either it's unsafe to them or it's not good for the business they're camping in front, or for whatever reason. Then the chief is going to come to me and not me, the city administrator, and have a discussion about, you know, we probably should give them a place they can be. So then we can do an administrative order to say for the next 2 weeks or whatever, we're going to allow in this spot. And then when that's done, it might be a different spot the next time. It's not going to be an established site. I think we do have to possibly make some signage changes. But once this is adopted, Brian and I will look at that.
Sorry, I'm not trying to drag things out here, but maybe one other thought is as Counselor Smith mentioned, maybe a lot of the hesitant or concern is just not knowing the facts and knowing, you know, because for those of us on the council, we've had a chance to hear specifically what is being changed, and it's got a narrow scope to it. And we all know that, but some of the citizens do not know, and they're getting false information from, you know, social media or what have you. Would it be a good idea to maybe consider having some sort of an open house or some sort of a town hall to have a knowledgeable person come and present to people in the community, to just tell them what, you know, how this is the scope, this is what it means for Coburg, and maybe answer questions that they might have. Would that maybe be even more effective than just deciding, well, we need a discussion group. Maybe we need just to have a or something where people can listen to the facts, ask questions, get them answered by somebody that actually knows what they're talking about. And
Oh, I'm sorry, Chief Larson. I couldn't see you, the sun was coming in.
Having been in our city council meeting here, Harrisburg and Junction City, all the cities are struggling with the same thing you guys are, almost the identical question. The hardest part is, I believe that Tony Conley was here, at all three cities, nobody has the answer. It's all right. It comes down to place and manner. We look at that as a vision. We have incredible discretion on all kinds of law enforcement issues. It's one of them. We try to use multiple tools to address it. And that's why we've been pretty successful on helping them. They need it. I remember leaving a council meeting, they had someone in front of Fernie Lane, let him sleep on the sidewalk.
Larry, I need your mic.
Oh. Right there on the sidewalk. Like a 90. So I think the biggest part is that if you have hurricane, and I feel very that's why it's are in your back. Call it up. Someone now. No. Full time. Private property today. I. North of the Dave.
So would it be good,
Counselor
because
Smith?
Larry does, I mean, he has to enforce it the way the law tells him he has to, or but maybe just as we go on, you said bring concerns to the mayor, maybe we could on a website or something, just do frequently asked questions.
That has been discussed. Again,
Okay.
it's a moving target right now. But that is certainly something that we'll take a look at again.
So it sounds like we'll live with it as it is now, and then as concerns come up, we'll deal with them the best.
And we can certainly put out a mini newsletter that we've done in the past. We hit the citizens with it in 3 different ways. We put it in utility billing, we get it out on social media, and then we get it out in the actual our town newsletter of just basic knowledge of the council adopted this. This is why. It's what it means in a very simplified form, and offer for them to call if they have more questions.
I think, yeah, just that would be helpful.
Just
Then it doesn't get all
keep that
penned up and
communication going.
feel.
Anything else?
So there is a second part to this. So it is a second ordinance. And it seemed to do with parking. So those changes can be found on page 78 and 79. And it is just really the elimination of some language. That eliminates in section 23. Number 4 eliminates that. And then on 13. It's just clarifying the change that's being made in 23. So the change is really there in section 23. I think that is the only change in that ordinance. So that is removing the prohibited parking of a motor vehicle, motor home. Instead, if they're parked in an area that it's the same thing. If they're parked in an area where we don't want them to park, it's not good for them to park. Or we're getting complaints or for whatever reason, then we have to designate where they can park. We can't ask them to go park in Eugene. Not an option.
Okay. Questions, comments? Difficult. These are difficult, and it is made more difficult because it is in such a state of flux. Yeah. And it's not hard and fast. And I think that's exactly what we're feeling and what we're trying to respond to as best we can at this point. So we're not in violation. Okay, so if there are no other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion. 71-C and ordinance A 246-A.
Besides my jaw here. City Council adopt ordinance A 171-C, amending A 171 as amended by A 171-A and A 171-B, an ordinance establishing city park regulations. And I move that the city of Coburg City Council adopt ordinance A 246-A, an ordinance amending ordinance A 246, an ordinance controlling vehicular and pedestrian traffic.
Thank you, Councilor Wells. Do I have a second? Councilor Lehman, thank you. Any further discussion? Those in favor, please raise your hands. 5 in favor, any opposed? And carries. Council action items. Now we have the IGAs, intergovernmental agreements for telecommunications and computer services provided by LCOG. And a staff report by Ms. Heath.
So these are annual agreements that we have with LCOG. They serve our IT and they serve our phone system. We have an LCOG employee here every other Thursday that are dealing with computer issues, network issues, whatever it is we need, setting things up, helping us problem solve. We also have the telecommunications system, which they manage for us. So these are 2 agreements to continue their services in 23-24.
The monthly rate actually went. Oh, no, that, I'm sorry.
Last year.
I just saw that. Okay. Question. Council
So
Lehman.
the IT person from LCOG that comes every other Thursday, how long do they stay here? Are they utilized throughout the whole time here?
He's usually here all day. And yeah, he's pretty busy. There's usually a list of things that he's working on. He's also, they're available to the staff at any time. But he's actually on site once every 2 weeks. And it could be anything from problem solving somebody's computer to setting up new software for somebody or doing work on the server. Whatever's needed IT wise.
Responsive also by email or phone. Usually I'll email him if I have a question, computer question. He's very helpful. Other questions or comments? I think he's well utilized. And certainly is much more cost effective to contract it than to have somebody here on a full-time basis, which would not, I mean, we wouldn't need anybody on a full-time basis, so much more cost effective this way. So if there are no questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve annual intergovernment agreements with Lane Council of Governments for Information System Services and Telecommunication System Management 2023-2024.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Counselor Smith. All those in favor? Signify by raising your hand. Any opposed? This is 5-0. We have the City of Cottage Grove Intergovernmental Agreement Addendum or Addendum 3 for Building Permit Program Services. And it's Ms. Winter.
Change it up a little bit. Good evening, council. Good evening, mayor. Before you is addendum 3 to the IGA with Cottage Grove to provide building permit program services. We started contracting with Cottage Grove for building permit program services in July of 2020. So this is the third addendum. Each year, amendments are made to more accurately reflect the cost of the program to Cottage Grove. In 2017, there was a mandate that required that all cities have a building official and a building program, and the building official being an employee of a city. And so a lot of small cities grouped together. And so Cottage Grove provides building permit program services to Coburg, Cresswell, and Veneta, as well as their own Cottage Grove. I am happy to answer any questions.
So the $80,000 is, you have 2022, 2023, but that's actually, it's still in effect for 2023, 2024. Am I reading that right? So it's the same amount that we spent last year. We're going to be.
No, actually, I think that those years are just backed up one. So
Oh,
last
gotcha.
year's cost, I think, was 65. This year, the addendum 3 will be for 80,000. And those are quarterly payments.
And it's a bargain even at $80,000, right? But
It is.
why such a jump? I mean, from 65 to 80 in 1 year. I mean, you know.
There is included with your packet, the cost breakdown from each of the contracts, and you can look and see where costs gone up. I believe staff time has gone up, as well as costs of service, materials and goods. Coburg pays 15% of the total program cost, as does Cresswell. And then Veneta pays 20% and Cottage Grove pays the remainder. Coburg, even though they're both 15%, Coburg pays just a little more than Cresswell does because we reimburse for mileage. And so them traveling to Coburg is just a little bit further than Cresswell, but otherwise the costs are pretty nicely distributed among the jurisdictions participating.
We get a report monthly on all of it, and Coburg often has more than Veneta or Crestwood.
And they are, I should also mention, they are fantastic to work with, very responsive, very helpful, very quick. You may.
Very good.
Good. Good to hear. Any other
It's a
questions?
great solution to another state mandate.
Right, that was really like, oh, what are we gonna do? Hire our own building inspector? You know?
I assume the mandate though too is for, maybe some people were trying to develop in a town and they just couldn't get any approvals through. And so I wonder if that's why there was a mandate. So you have to have somebody that can process land use applications and
It's a
building.
long
applications.
history. It's a very deep and long history of how it got to there.
Other questions, comments? If not, I will entertain a motion to accept the IGA with City of Cottage Grove. Anyone?
I can do it.
Answer well.
I make a motion to accept the IGA with the City of Cottage Grove.
I have a second.
Second.
The Blaine. Any other council discussion? Those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? 5 in favor, 0 opposed. Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have the Lane County Sheriff's Intergovernmental Agreement for Dispatch Services.
Hi, everybody.
Larson.
So this is a contract renewal for dispatch service at the Sheriff's Department. We started dispatch, or they started dispatching for us July of 2020. The contract started at 63,000. It was built in at 3% COLA every year. So it has gone up 3% every year. This year, it's going up more than that due to labor costs for a negotiation with one of their unions, which is why there was an additional $4,005 increase in the cost. What we get is 24-hour dispatch service. They monitor all of our warrants, our stolen vehicles and stolen property. We get 96 hours of service from the radio communications person to program our radios if we have any radio issues. Other than that, it's the same as the contract before. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions? Well, if not, then I will entertain a motion to approve the IGA with Lane County Sheriff's Department for dispatch services.
I move to approve the intergovernment agreement with Lane County Sheriff's Department to provide dispatch services for the Warren Police Department.
Second.
Have a motion by Counselor Blaine and a second by Counselor Lehman. Is there any discussion? None? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. That was easy. And you're still happy with them, right? Good. Oh, now it's going to be Mr. Harmon.
Yeah, I'll take the last two.
Okay.
I'll be
thank
quick.
you.
The first one that we're gonna do is the Coburg Loop Path and Industrial Way projects. Many of you probably were aware that several years ago, we started design of continuing the loop path from just north of Serenity Lane down North Industrial Way to connect the park system with the last park at Trails End at the end of Coburg Industrial Way. The process, the project went over budget, which was kind of expected with everything. City had to go out and get more funding. We did weeks, I wouldn't even say months later, weeks later, Gene, who was the project designer, came back and said, you're still over budget. So the city went out and got more funding. And so after the second time, said, no more, we can't go get more funding. And we can't afford the project as is.
But the difference in funding was about 300,000.
Yeah, 300,000. Yeah, so the first time it went over 300,000, we went and got more funding, and then they came back and said, well, you're still over budget by 300,000. So with some collaborating with ODOT and the city of Eugene, we came up with 3 different options or ideas.
155, if you want to review those options as Brian was talking about them.
Yeah, so I'll go through 155. It says page 2 of 6 down at number 1 is go forward with both projects as initially designed. So the initial design was a 10-foot path set inside the west side of North Industrial, and it would have ran north towards Trails End Park. With option 1, that would make this project just a shovel-ready project. We could finish design and until the city received more funding.
Brian, we should mention that it also included the preservation of industrial.
Yes, so both those projects, one is the continuation of the loop path and the other is the street preservation on Industrial Way. So that was option number 1. Option 2 is move forward with the pavement preservation with a bike ped option. Painted on the pavement. So what that option would do, it would render the loop path funding portion of this non-existent. But is that a fair thing to say, Ann?
It wouldn't be utilizing the donated parkland, so we would lose the credit that we have for our donation.
We had land that was donated
Yeah.
by.
That
was
is
gonna be our
correct.
match.
It would increase
that
the
right?
city's match in cash because we wouldn't be utilizing the donated.
There's a lot that goes into that. I don't think I need to go into too much detail with that because option 3 kind of spells that out a little bit more detail. So option 3, this is the one that staff recommends, is move forward to complete both projects with a path leaving the road connecting the existing path on the donated land and then jumping back onto the road north end with a 2-lane bike path painted on the pavement. So what we would end up with is 2 travel lanes on North Industrial Way. And on the west side of that road would be with some safety features to delineate traffic from pedestrian. What looks like we don't know quite yet because we haven't seen the actual design. Yes, sir.
Is it all right to ask? But they're just painted lines on.
Yes,
the pavement.
so
Okay.
yes, with possibly some
Erased concrete berm.
yeah, so that would be the
Maybe
safety.
Some sort of a little.
Yes.
curve
You've been to
that-
on Amazon?
Yeah.
There we go.
It would
Thank
be
you.
Just like that.
That's the, I was trying to
That's
figure
what
out
we're
the street. I
trying
couldn't
to
remember.
aim for is, so that would be on the road and then it would jump into the donated land where there is already a path. And then jump back onto the road at the end.
The donated land is the one in front, like where Sherwin-Williams is.
Yes, that's correct.
That's the donated land,
Yes.
not the big parcel to the south of that.
Part of that was going to be donated land. If I'm not mistaken, because we were gonna have to place the path there. It would have been right of way
Just
donation.
Serenity Lane, is that where you're thinking?
It's where that RV glass that you know, that's out of. it.
Yeah. I think it's North Star or something like
Oh,
that.
sure, yeah.
At any rate, the donated piece that we were getting credit for is the piece between Coach Glass and Hamilton Construction. So the path that's already built would have been donated to the city. And that's what we were gonna get the credit for.
Is that already a public sidewalk, or did they just do that out of their graciousness? of
For the
their own?
goodness of their heart.
Really?
It does sit back quite a ways back, so that would increase the right of way there quite a bit because it sits quite a bit further back than the section that you were just referring to. That section would have been closer to the street to stay in the right of way. Is that right, Ann?
So basically, what you're saying is we would have the berm, concrete curb or whatever down that would be sort of part of the road. Maybe that's the shoulder of the road at this point is the shoulder.
Yeah,
of
so if you were to
North Industrial?
Yeah, so if you were to drive, let's say, southbound on North Industrial, what would be right next to you would be the race. You know, I think they're about 4 feet tall, delineators with reflectors on them. And then on the ground, also some reflectors. And then on the inside of that would be a 2-lane bike path with, so it would look like a miniature street, basically.
And that would be used by both bikes and
Yes.
pedestrians.
Yep, that's called bike ped. Yep.
Okay.
itself, ODOT and the city of Eugene have elaborated on.
That would bring us within budget.
Actually, it would decrease the budget
Yeah,
by
we-
about 90,000, so.
But we'd
I
still
wouldn't
get
count
credit.
on that, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I
but
know.
at least we're
At this
within
moment in
budget.
time.
We
Yeah.
can get the project done.
So the estimate for that was 90,000 under the second to the last estimate. But you know, we are seeing, especially from city staff engineers, our estimates are a little bit higher. Things have been coming under the estimate out. I don't see how this project could go over unless the sky again falls, but it seems like oil prices are coming back down or stabilizing at least. Yes, sir.
When would, like, if option 3 is the option, right? When does that actually take place? When can we start working on that project?
I believe that the engineers from the city of Eugene, or we changed, before we had to change to this design, we're at about 90%. So, and with this design, it's minimal changes to the original design. So it possibly could be bid out for construction in spring.
I don't think
That's
it's
my
gonna
guess.
happen this summer due to the changes that are gonna have to take place in the project.
Our window's getting pretty tight. I mean, we're at June 13th. So I don't think this would be bid out.
It's the 23 to 25 funding, and then we have some funding that's right, well, yeah, but
Is that part of what we did the swap on?
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to clarify that. So there's all kinds of pieces there as we make this change. So if the council goes with this change, then we can come back and let you know, okay. City of Eugene says if this is what we're gonna do, this is when they can get it done. So, and I hope all counselors understand that we have to have a certified agency do our projects. So we don't have a choice in this. Eugene or Lane County are our choices in certified agencies to manage our project.
What, oh, sorry, go ahead, Councilor Smith.
So is it my understanding correct that this money is designated specifically for the loop project? And if we choose to table it, and not do it at all, we lose money?
I don't know if we would lose money, but we just don't have the money to bridge.
Well, it's.
You wanna
it
explain that?
has- it's transportation funding.
So it has to
It
be
has
used for
to
that.
be, it's transportation related projects and it's, yeah, we can't spend it anywhere else. In fact, they tried to get us to say, just don't do the pavement preservation, and Brian and I were like, no. The pavement preservation has to happen. That's the most important thing we do now.
That was the only choice. To the pavement preservation. I have a hard time believing that that's gonna be utilized in the. It doesn't go. around.
I will say that there's a lot of people that utilize the loop path to Serenity Lane and then go down the shoulder as safely as they can to Trails End Park.
Homeless way.
A lot of, there's a group of birders that go out there. There's a lot of people that use Trails End.
It's the main reason why we switched. I don't know if anybody remembers, but it's been 5 or 6 years that we actually changed to this section for the loop path. The use would have been higher on the other side.
Going on south.
Yes, that's correct.
And to clarify your suggestion, the preservation project was a separate project. Then the Coburg Loop Path, both were funded.
Coburg Loop Path received additional funding at the same time the preservation project came in. City of Eugene agreed to blend the two projects into one and be the certified agency. If we were to just do the preservation project, we lose our match. Because we lose our donation, we're not utilizing it, so that means the city would have to come up with more money. Whereas right now, we're gonna be able to only put up the 10.2%, 10.27% of the preservation work. And possibly a little bit of match on the path.
So they were pretty blended. So if you lose one, you lose that.
It's just, it's kind of a catch-22. You could go back and ask that we put all the money towards preservation, but they're gonna say, yeah, but that doesn't have a bike ped option. So therefore, you're gonna lose your match.
And they're really the transportation groups that I sit on and attend. They are really pushing across Lane County for alternate forms of transportation. So if we don't pay attention to that, and I know that's kind of hard for us out here. It's tough to get along in Coburg with no car. I mean, you can get in Coburg, but you can't get most other places, but that is what they're looking for. They're pushing across, not just in Lane County, but across the state.
We'll go with 3.
So do we need a motion or do you
I
just
think
need?
this is just direction.
A
Simple
direction.
motion, the simple motion would be good.
Okay,
That, I think we should go with a motion, because it is a decision to make a change to a project.
so, at this point, I will accept a motion.
I'm trying to put one. I'm sorry, go ahead.
go
Were you
ahead.
gonna
No, no.
suggest some language? I move to recommend that the staff move forward with option number 3, where we complete both projects with the Coburg Path loop leaving the road or leaving path and going onto the shoulder of the road as needed, as described.
Second.
So we have a motion by Counselor Engelbretson and a second by Counselor Lehman. Any other discussion? None? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? 5-0, motion passes, and we will go with option 3. Thank you for that, and I will tell you again, sitting on these transportation meetings, we're not the only city that's struggling with, they were awarded X, but then X comes back, the proposal comes back and it's 2X, and people are going, I don't know what to do now, so it's a tough call, but appreciate the options. Okay, the next one is the temporary crosswalk application.
Yeah, so this is kind of a simple staff report. In the beginning of June, the city was approached by the Arts Committee to put down some temporary crosswalk art. You've probably seen them in other cities. The only request that I had was that we send it through the insurance company to make sure that we were going to be covered if somebody was to be, if this caused a claim of some sort. CIS said, yeah, you're good to go with the conditions that are listed in some portion. We checked off the boxes. Number 2, it says make sure it's temporary paint. Not pain. We don't want anybody to have any pain in that crosswalk. We've had to cross that bridge already, huh? Approve what is going to be painted. I think the renderings are exactly what they'd like to do. Yeah, and the rest are kind of simple. The very last one, the permit that they will fill out is the right of way permit or the facilities permit through Public Works.
Like a shuffleboard for it.
And does everybody have the map?
Yes.
Okay, so you kind of know where these two locations are identified.
Really meant to, for public crossing during the festival months in the park areas.
Those are the only two they're looking at.
Yes, as of right now, yes. Most of the other ones, yeah, I don't know if the county would go for that. They may, but that would have to go through Lane County and not us.
So how long does the temporary paint last?
Well, so I think when it says approve what is going to be painted, it's also the paint type. It does say temporary, and like Ann was just saying, it's through, you know, the summer months through the festival season. So I don't know what that means. I don't know. I've never had to deal with temporary painting a swalk, so I guess we'll cross
Yeah,
that sidewalk when we get there.
Crosswalk.
But we will work with the Arts Committee on what the temporary paint is and how temporary it is.
I'm assuming by like rainy season, if it starts to. look
It's possible.
Crappy, we want to get that off of there.
Pressure wash it off.
Yeah, obviously, we don't want, you know, it's gonna have to be some sort of paint that if we wash it into the stormwater system, it's not gonna, you know,
Yeah.
be harmful to the environment, things like that. So them are the things that we'll look at when we meet with the Arts Committee. Yes, sir.
The tempera paint. Shut off immediately after the event, or will that also last for weeks and months?
I think this is meant to last through the months of July, August, and possibly September.
I would be in favor of the tempera paint.
So there's probably some recommended paint.
Yeah, I'm
for
guessing,
this type
yes.
of project.
Yep.
I would guess.
The only staff time that we'll put into this is meeting with the park or the Arts Committee, and then providing possibly some traffic control so they can actually do the painting.
Questions, comments?
Would make a motion
All right, thank you.
to approve the temporary paint crosswalk proposal using the tempera paint.
Would say that it needs to we probably need not to specify type of paint. Yeah, I think again, I would bet that there are paints that are recommended for what they're trying to do. I don't know that tempera paint would stand up for long enough.
That's my motion.
Okay, well, I don't think that we should specify type of paint.
I think we left that figure. It's
Oh, are you withdrawing your motion?
No. It can die as no second, if you don't want to second it.
Is there a second to Council Lehman's motion? Well, I will consider another motion.
I move that we approve the crosswalk art and the temporary crosswalk art that's proposed by the Arts Committee.
We have a motion by Councillor Smith. Do I have a second?
second.
Second by Councillor Blaine. Any other discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? 5 in favor, 0 opposed, motion passes.
I just have one shameless plug. I don't know if you've seen that the pickleball grand opening is happening June 22nd at 2:30 at Norma Pfeiffer Park, but if you could make it, you may witness a pickleball match between the mayor and myself. Yeah, well, hey, I'm calling you out at a council meeting. I do not, never have before.
Should be interesting. Sorry, I'm gonna miss it.
Can't we ride tricycles or something?
That would be fun too.
We used to do that as fundraisers. Yeah, that was wild. too. Pickleball, I'll have to go check it out. Okay. You did fight, didn't you?
Yeah.
Ryan? We have the city administrators report. Is there, are there any questions about
Any questions on my
his
report? Yeah, just a few things. Well is under construction. We are still working on the permit for the east side line to Premier RV, where it's still in process.
And we're communicating with,
Oh, yeah,
yes.
latest-
Okay,
the latest that we've heard from them is that after all of this, we could be exempt. From, but. Don't take that because they said it's under analysis right now as to whether or not that's the. That's Department of State. Lands. So,
not needing a permit, is that?
Yeah, so we're hoping that it's going to be wrapped up soon.
And they're okay at Premier RV.
Yeah, and they're aware. I've been keeping them in the loop. So Catherine's very aware of what's going on. And I just, let's see. I was just thinking if there's anything else that I should call out.
So the street project on North Willamette, that's mostly, that's the water lines going in right now. You have all the peaks and parses for that.
I don't want to scream because Samuel
Yes,
yell at
you
me.
will.
Right now what they're doing is the water main replacement. So the reconstruction of North Willamette will come after this project. So we'll be applying for a small city allotment grant for $250,000 this summer. And that'll probably come to you in September for approval.
And that's part of the safe routes for school or?
July. Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry. July is due in September. Yes. So, yes, sorry. I tried to skip ahead. Tried to get out of a staff report.
Okay. Counselor Blaine, did you have a question?
Oh, is this about the streets? Mine was told.
Well, it
Go
is.
ahead. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if anything has been done about the Van Dyne intersection.
North Willamette and Van Dyne.
Right, I'm sorry. Right.
Yeah, I think we're setting up either a work session with the
Oh.
engineers.
The engineers are going to come to the transportation discussion group. We had a meeting with the engineers, went over kind of what we're looking for. And he really wanted to hear from the transportation group of their concerns. He also wanted Lincoln County in the room because it's their road. And so we've invited them to the meeting as well as ODOT and Commissioner Buck to discuss that. So the engineer will be there on July 12th to discuss this, and then he will draw up some ideas for both short-term and long-term solutions. So there is some nice ideas for just short-term solutions until we can do something more permanent.
Long-term is like a huge, big project.
It's a big project.
But in the short run, we need to do something. make that safer. There's a lot of concern about safety. That's the way all of those roads and intersections come together.
Oh, mine was just about the Pavilion Park. It looks like the design was set June 8th.
The park committee met with the designer June 8th, and they kind of hammered out the last pieces to finish the final design.
So some of the things that we will need to do. Come up with a restroom that's suitable and fits in the budget. And also the fountain design and how that would work and fit into the project. All those pieces have to go together for the final 90% plans.
The restroom and the fountain are outside of the scope of the designer.
Yeah, that's correct, but they have to fit into the park design, so we kind of have to meld everything together towards the end.
It's gonna be gorgeous.
Yeah, it's cool.
And there will be naming opportunities and donation opportunities probably there too.
Let's see, the other thing I wanted to point out to you, if you didn't see it in your email, because I did send it out, is we did hear back from the Business Oregon regarding our request to apply for more funding. And they basically didn't say no, they didn't say yes. They said, yes, parts of your project does qualify, but there's other cities that are in greater need than you are. And so it'll depend on how much money is available, how much people ask for, and they'll let us. And
Hold your breath.
yeah, they'll be reaching out to us in mid to late 2023 to let us know whether or not we can apply. So what are we doing with this? The city we've went to a lot of effort to figure out what projects can get done with the money that we have. That includes getting the well done, which is what the engineer said, if you don't do anything else, at least do that. And the line up Stallings Lane to connect to the rest of the system and to finish the primary water main that we already have in design. Then we've told the engineer, stop. Don't design anything else right now, because we need to hammer out how we're going to pay going forward for what else needs to be done. And so I don't know how long that stop will be. It's not a bad idea because there's plenty on our plate. And so it would probably be a lull while we regroup and to look for some more funding. But so at this point, the main, Brian, do you want to just run over what main lines that would be that we'll move forward with? And so it would be the Collector Street.
Yeah, there wouldn't be much more after the transmission main from Stallings into Coburg Road. Then street up to where we rebuilt Coleman. So that's a collector. And what we want to do is if we're going to move forward with Collector Street and impacts, we don't want to pave a street and then dig it back up, right? So we want to try and get that main line taken care of. Also with that, you don't want to reconstruct a street with that big transmission AC line, 18 inches below a dozer trying to, move rock. It probably would not hold up. So we would, have to deal with that as well. So what that means is there's a big alleyway right now between Dixon and Pearl Street. That's what we're going to try and eliminate and reroute it around to Coleman Street. So it makes getting rid of AC lines important, and also, connectivity down streets a little bit better for the water system. So that is mainly the one that we're worried about the most.
Then what doesn't get done right now or would be in that low is the rehab of the existing wells and the rehab to the reservoirs. So that, those two projects mainly are gonna have to wait until we can acquire funding for them.
There's also some work that Public Works will do ourselves to try and save money on engineering and putting projects out to bid. And that work would be done on Mill Street towards Skinner.
So are we, once the third well is up and running and we have the transmission line in, is it your plan that we will lower the water in the existing reservoirs?
Yeah, so that's kind of the plan right now with, running on the two wells that we have. We just don't think it's a good idea to lower those levels. Cause that kind of puts us behind the eight ball if something does happen. We want that freeboard of reservoir space right now for the operation level of the reservoirs after the third source is online.
And that was in line with the engineer's recommendation,
Correct.
Along with the seismic upgrades
Right.
that we're gonna put a pause on.
Yep.
Until we can finance them.
Yep.
That was a big ticket item.
And like Ann said, putting a pause on things doesn't hurt anything. It gives the engineer and staff time to kind of breathe between projects, because right now we're project overload.
So all of the AC lines,
Eventually will be phased out.
okay.
Eventually. It may take time. And it forward and we build some reserve back. It's possible we can take one section at a time, design it, put it out to bid and get it removed. That's the ultimate goal in the master plan.
Pave that street or
Or,
preserve
yeah.
that street.
Yep.
at the
So
same time.
there's a big section of AC that runs down South Willamette. It's in the shoulder. So that would be shoulder work. It wouldn't necessarily have impact the surface of the road. Yep, you bet.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Just let you know that Tracy Pugh has resigned from Main Streets. Tracy's an educator and she misses kids. And so she's gonna be taking a job at Halsey Elementary School. And so I don't know what's gonna happen with the posting of that position. The Main Streets is gonna have to, I don't know if you know. It's at the board meeting today. And one of our questions was, the fact that this is not a funded position, that the person isn't going to be an employee. Right. We were wondering if we were required to post and go through a job search, or if there is a candidate that would be qualified that the board could be. You don't have any requirements. City government has totally different requirements. I mean, you can do whatever you want. What they're looking at is there is a couple of candidates that have been registered already that have come forward, so they're thinking if we're able to do that, so that Tracy will be there.
When is Tracy's last day?
By the end of June. Yeah,
Coming up.
stay on and, help with something. It'll be like to stay. And just lastly, I will be taking a medical leave beginning next Monday and I'll be out till the 4th of July. It's minor surgery with some downtime required. So city will be fine. Staff know what they do. We continue to do it. Mayor will be around and I'll be available on the second week, probably to work from home. But I won't be in the office.
So on the change in accounting practices, do we have any, is there any more input on that?
Now, I've contacted our funders and neither one of them have got back to me. The world we live in now, but the auditor has agreed to come to your August meeting and explain it. And if you don't hold an August meeting, he knows that is possible. He will come to September. Not going to affect this year's audit. We're going to go forward as is. And it would affect the future. If you made that decision, you don't have to make it right now.
And it really is, it sort of hinges on what our lenders require in terms of
Exactly.
auditing.
And I just want clarification.
Yeah.
From our lenders.
Makes perfect sense. Oh, yes, yes, council comments. Thank you, Counselor Endebus.
So, I'm going to be attending tomorrow night. Counselor Fox had been attending the Lane Act, meetings, which is a regional committee on transportation.
It's the Lane Area Commission on Transportation and it's part, so you have, and you correct me, but there's ODOT who gets the big chunk of funding and then ODOT sort of disperses it out. So there's the MPO, which is the Metropolitan Policy Organization. And then there's the MPC, which is the Metropolitan Planning Committee, yes. And then there's the Lane Act. So I have tried really hard to pound these things into my brain and they all have a little piece of the puzzle. And the last three all come under LCOG, sort of manages those. So go right ahead.
So I'm going to attend that tomorrow night. And it'll be fun because it's going to be my first time at that committee. And then evidently they've decided that they want to hear from all the local jurisdictions as to what their priorities are for transportation. So I read your email, Megan, and if you have a couple minutes, I'll chat with you after. But as far as I know, the big points that I'm going to hit on are, we have our I-5 interchange that it's been under discussion for years. And part of that deal is that Coburg agreed to increase our UGB to include industrial land on the east side of the interstate. And we brought in more land than we actually needed according to the land use process in order to provide regional employment. Well, we're in a catch-22 there. I assume that there's certain developments that if they wanted to go in, they wouldn't necessarily be able to because it wouldn't pass the traffic assessment or whatever it's called because the interchange isn't upgraded. So that's an issue because evidently very recently, one of the staff members, I believe it's a staff member of this organization, indicated to Counselor Fox that that project's just that's not gonna get funded. Forget about it. It's not gonna be anytime soon. So I'm gonna get to go in and say, well, it's an issue. I don't know where that's gonna go, but that's one. So if you have any ideas, let me know. And then I think the other issues are just like the regional traffic that we have traveling through Coburg on the county streets. that we're becoming more and more concerned about because that traffic continues to increase quite a bit. It seems like for those of us that live here and just kind of see it anecdotally, it looks like there's a lot more. And then the feasibility study, I think that we've been talking about for the some sort of a bypass, an east-west connector related to the regional traffic that's coming through the town. So
Anything else? Any other concerns from council that would like Councilor Engelbretson to bring up? I have the packet here for you. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it's awesome that you're going and just in the past. I know that I'm glad you're going and
yeah, somebody's got to go represent us for sure. We got to have someone.
We did talk with our former mayor, Ray J. Foodwell, who was mayor when the IAMP was developed and has a whole lot of knowledge on this. And said, would you please come to the meeting on July 12th? And he said yes.
that's the
And
transportation.
he actually worked for ODOT. And we had a really good discussion about how something gets moved from priority without a stakeholder knowing it. It's a good question of how did that suddenly become a non-viable project?
So when they were scoping, when the traffic engineers looked at the interchange, the IAM, recently as we were expanding the urban growth boundary to the east, what they came back with was a cap on how many trips per day. And so if you start putting those restrictions on developers, they're like, yeah, never mind. I mean, and if you go over those trips per day, then I don't know what happens, but.
The bridge has to be upgraded.
Yes, it's simply not. And the interchanges for those of us that go from north and south, I mean, they're just kind of crazy.
I think the other piece is that what was stated in a meeting I was at is that the bridge is fine. Nothing wrong with the bridge.
That's in better
But-
shape than others.
And it's absolutely unsafe. It's unsafe for pedestrians who should not be on it or bikers, but it's also unsafe because trucks have to go into the other lane on both sides of the bridge to make the turn, which means that they are over in lanes they don't belong in, and that's unsafe to other traffic. So it's not a safe bridge.
So structurally, what they may be
Structurally,
saying
it's
is
okay.
structurally, the bridge is fine. But it's the interchange.
Capacity is
Yeah.
enough and it's not safe.
Any other comments from council? If none, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:32. Thank you all very, very much. We could have added a couple more ordinances. Yes, I will get your name on
Right.
this.
Thanks, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
I would go to.
Next
See
time.
if everything's staying granddaughter.
Yeah, I know. One leg's not moving as well as the other.
But anyway, that.
Yes, yeah.
Chris, I talk about that a lot. I think,
It is just.
getting ready in the morning sounds nice, but the reality is gonna be,